Kids are a nuisance. Go to a foster care facility.
I don't have a mom. My name is Emily Smith. I'm still in 5th grade and live with my dad and mom. My dad is very kind and takes me out on his days off. Mom acts normal when dad is around, but when he's not, she seems cold and somewhat indifferent, making it a bit hard to talk to her.
See you later.
As usual, my dad goes to work early in the morning. I say goodbye to him while eating breakfast. Looking at the clock, I realize it's almost time for me to go to school. I need to hurry up and finish my breakfast so I can change. Thanks for the meal. After finishing, I put the dishes in the sink and head back to my room to change.
Wait a minute.
I turned around when my mom called me back and saw her pointing to the sink.
Who's going to wash this?
Well, her eyes were cold and she seemed angry. Usually, I would change and go to school, but I felt like she would get mad if I did that now. I'll wash it myself. I mutter and suddenly she shouts, "What? I can't hear you because you're speaking so quietly." I flinch, but feeling guilty, I apologize to her. "Sorry, I'll wash it myself."
Humph, as you should. From now on, take care of your own stuff.
Mom threw her apron on the sofa, still angry, and went to her room. Reflecting on her words, I realized I should do things by myself, so I washed the breakfast dishes and left for school. While talking with friends at school, the topic of parents came up. Listening to them, it seems like everyone's moms are kind, and even though they get scolded, they have good relationships. What's your mom like, Emily? Caught off guard by the question, I struggled to answer. But I guessed I must have misunderstood her coldness, thinking she was in a bad mood because I hadn't taken care of myself. So I answered that she's very kind. My friends say that's nice, but I felt complicated inside. I'm home. When I got back, Mom wasn't there. Maybe she went shopping, I thought, and started my homework in my room. Before I know it, it's dark outside, and the clock indicates it's usually dinner time, but Mom hasn't returned yet. Then I heard noises at the entrance, the rustling sounds, and the fridge being opened. I peeked into the kitchen from my room's door and saw my mom. I was hungry, so I went to the kitchen and told my mom to welcome back.
I'm back.
She replied quickly without turning around, still seeming to be in a bad mood. What's for dinner today? I asked her with a smile. But perhaps that was a mistake, as my mom's face when she turns around is frightening.
What? I told you to take care of yourself.
What?
Your dad will be home soon, and I'm busy making dinner.
Unable to say anything more to her, I reluctantly start to make instant noodles when my dad comes home.
I'm home.
Hearing his voice, my mom quickly took the instant noodles from my hands. Confused about what to do next, I was still trying to figure it out when my dad entered the kitchen.
Oh, starting dinner now?
Looking at my kind dad's face, I felt like crying. Welcome back.
Today I got late going shopping, and I'm just making dinner now. Wait a little longer, okay, honey and Emily?
Mom's face turned gentle. I wasn't sure if she was still mad, but thinking that I'd be eating the dinner she made me happy. Later, we had dinner as a family and had a fun time playing games with Dad. I guess Mom was just in a bad mood. Thinking that she wouldn't get mad if I took care of my things properly, I fell asleep. From the next day, I made an effort to do things myself. I washed the breakfast dishes, folded the laundry that was dried, and put them in the closet. I vacuumed my room, and when Mom came home late, I made myself instant noodles. Thinking that Mom would praise me made me grin. She hasn't praised me yet, but she gets angry less often. When Dad is home, we have a good time as a family. I was happy about that. One night, I heard something like a groan and woke up. Thinking it might be a ghost, I hid under the covers. The groaning continued for a while, and as I was shaking with fear, I heard the sound of an ambulance. The ambulance stopped nearby, and I realized it was close. Wondering who it could be, the front door became noisy. For the first time, I realized it stopped in front of our house, and I jumped out of bed just as my dad was being carried out. "Dad!" I screamed and ran towards him. He looked pale and was sweating, clearly in a lot of pain. Tears came to my eyes, and I clung to the paramedic saying, "Please save my dad." The paramedic placed a hand on my head and said they were taking him to the hospital now. Then, Mom and I rode in the ambulance to the hospital, where Dad was rushed in. Mom and I could only wait in the designated area. What if something happened to Dad? What if he was gone? While waiting, my heart was filled with anxiety. However, my mom, who was beside me, folded her arms and looked at her phone, not at all worried. Alone and crying, I waited for someone to say, "It's all going to be okay." I don't know how much time passed, but eventually the doctor came to us. Mom and the doctor spoke about something serious, and all I could understand was that they found a disease in Dad, and he would have to stay in the hospital for a while. I should be relieved that it wasn't the worst case scenario, but I was shocked that Dad had to fight a disease. And the fact that he wouldn't be coming home for a while. Mom and I went home for a while. After preparing for Dad's hospital stay, Mom went back to the hospital. Left alone at home, I lay on the bed, unable to sleep, and as it was early morning, it soon became light outside. My school. I had to go to school, but I was not in the mood to go to school. I didn't feel like eating, so I just crawled back into my bed.
Aren't you going to school?
Mom noticed me around noon. She didn't scold me for not going to school, but seemed hurried as if she needed to go to the hospital, and soon left the house. Having not eaten anything since morning, I thought I might have a little something and went to the kitchen. I found some bread and made myself a sandwich with ham and cheese from the fridge. In the evening, Mom came back. She had bought lunch for me.
Eat this today. I also bought some instant noodles for you to eat from tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. I thought I shouldn't bother Mom since she was busy with Dad's situation, so I followed her instructions. The next morning, I ate instant noodles for breakfast and went to school. Friends asked why I was absent the day before, and I lied, saying I felt ill. My teacher seemed to know the situation and spoke kindly to me. When I got home, Mom wasn't there. She was probably at the hospital with Dad. I wanted to see Dad. I thought about asking Mom to take me with her on her next day off. While I was doing my homework, the phone rang. Being the only one at home, I answered it. "Hello?"
Oh, Emily, what are you up to?
It was Dad on the phone, and hearing his voice made me tear up. "Dad, are you okay now? I want to see you." As I cried, Dad laughed gently.
Sorry to worry you. I'm okay now. I wants to see Emily too. I'd be happy if you could come with Mom.
"Yeah, I'll ask Mom."
Okay. Oh, is Mom there?
I was puzzled by Dad's question. Mom wasn't at home. I had assumed she was at the hospital. Mom isn't here. Isn't she at the hospital? Hearing that, Dad seemed to realize something and fumbled a bit.
Oh, right. She just left there. She should be back soon. Emily, are you eating okay?
Yeah, Mom bought me some instant noodles and stuff. After I said that, Dad fell silent for a moment, then changed the subject. After talking to Dad for a while, I heard the front door open, so I told him Mom had returned. Dad asked me to hand the phone to Mom, and I did. Mom looked a bit flustered as she took the phone to talk to Dad. After she came home, I could smell tobacco on her and wondered where she had been as I returned to my room. The next day, Mom asked if I wanted to go to the hospital with her. When I said yes, she made a slight face but took me along. Seeing Dad after a long time, he was connected to an intravenous drip, but he smiled as soon as he saw me.
Emily, you came.
I hugged Dad. Seeing him looking well made me almost cry, but I was very happy to see him. After talking with Dad for a while, Mom said it was time to go, and we reluctantly left the hospital room. As I looked back, Dad waved at me with a smile, telling me to come again. But I never thought that would be our last conversation. Dad's condition suddenly worsened, and he passed away quickly. I couldn't believe Dad was gone as I dressed in black, as Mom told me to, and went to his funeral. Many people came to my dad's funeral to say their goodbyes. Seeing Mom handling everything so matter-of-factly made me wonder if Dad was really gone. As I stood dazed at the edge of the venue, someone approached me.
Hey, aren't you Emily?
I turned around to see a woman who looked a bit like a glam girl standing behind me. Well, I was puzzled, not knowing who she was, but then she sat next to me.
It's been a really long time, hasn't it? I'm Helen, your aunt. I'm your dad's sister.
Looking at her, she did resemble my dad. I don't remember having an aunt, but I've heard Dad talk about his sister before. My Auntie Helen.
That's right. I look like your dad, right?
She smiled, her face a mirror image of my dad's. Then suddenly, she hugged me.
It's okay to cry. You've been so strong, Emily.
I must have been crying without realizing it, and her words made me cry even more. It felt like the first time I truly understood that I wouldn't see my dad again. After a while, as my Aunt Helen patted my back and I calmed down, I thanked her and went to get a drink. When I entered the room, my mom was there, and seeing my tear-stained face, she said,
What? You cried? What an embarrassing look.
Her cold words stung. Mom, aren't you sad? Looking at my mom, who didn't seem sad at all, I couldn't help but ask.
There's no point in being sad. He's gone.
Her words chilled me to the bone. Despite the many times we laughed and had fun as a family of 3, did Mom dislike Dad? As I stood frozen, my aunt came over.
Wow, long time no see.
Aunt Helen said with a smile, and my mom's expression changed.
Oh, it's been a while.
Need any help with anything?
No, there's nothing.
Well then, Emily, let's you and I go over there.
She took my hand and led me out of the room. From the look on my mom's face, I could tell she was uncomfortable around my aunt. I stayed with my Aunt Helen, and we managed to get through Dad's funeral without any issues.
Emily, it's time to go.
After a while, Mom came to pick me up. Aunt Helen had been holding my hand but let go as we were leaving. Her face looked a bit sad.
Emily, see you soon.
Yeah, see you. As I reluctantly left with Mom, an unfamiliar car pulled up.
We're here.
It seemed to be someone Mom knew, and she opened the car door. A man I didn't know was driving, and I hesitated to get in.
Don't dawdle. Get in now.
Mom's tone was harsher than usual, and I reluctantly got into the car. The car moved in the opposite direction of home, and I watched the passing scenery outside, feeling a bit scared in the car, not knowing where we were going.
We're here. Get out quickly.
I was dropped off at a large building in an area completely unfamiliar to me. Mom, where are we? As I asked, my mom lit a cigarette and said,
Kids are a nuisance. Go to a foster care facility.
What? Before I could understand what was happening, the unfamiliar man and my mom drove away. I tried to chase after the car for a while, but realizing I couldn't catch up, especially after tripping, I gave up. Not knowing where to go, I headed back to where I had been left, and a car pulled up next to me. The window rolled down, and it was my aunt in the driver's seat.
I never imagined it would come to this. Get in, Emily.
Relieved to see my Aunt Helen, I quickly got into the car. She patted my head, and I quietly cried.
How many times are you going to cry today? Poor girl.
We drove in her car until we reached a house. It was at my aunt's house. As we entered, a man's voice welcomed us. Welcome back. I instinctively hid behind my Aunt Helen, and she laughed, saying, It's okay. Cautiously looking at the person, a young man stood smiling at me.
Sorry for the scare. I'm George, this lady's husband. I'm your uncle.
He extended his hand for a handshake. His friendly face reassured me, and as I shook his hand, he smiled again.
Must be hungry, right? Dinner's ready. You need to eat a lot to grow big.
You sound like a mom.
Listening to their cheerful banter, I couldn't help but laugh. Then my stomach growled, and I blushed, which made them both laugh. We then enjoyed a fun dinner for the first time in a while. After dinner, they let me take a bath and even prepared pajamas for me. They called me to the living room where they had prepared hot milk.
Hot milk? Aren't you a bit old for that? Right, Emily?
Hey, elementary school kids love hot milk, don't they? Or not?
Such conversations made the atmosphere very comfortable, and I laughed. They laughed along, and then said they had something to discuss and asked me to sit down with my hot milk.
Hey, Emily, how about becoming our child?
I choked on my milk at that question. Cough, cough. What?
Oh, sorry. I know it's sudden.
My Uncle George patted my back. Helen laughed heartily.
Become our kid. You don't want to go back to that kind of mom, do you?
Her words made me ponder. I didn't hate my mom, but thinking about everything at home, my dad, and being left behind, honestly, the thought of returning to my mom was frightening.
Actually, we heard from your dad before.
What? I was surprised to hear my dad's name. Then she explained in detail. The man with my mom was her lover, and it seemed my dad had been aware of her affair. He had been very worried about me. When it was discovered that my dad was ill and might not have long to live, he apparently told them to take care of me after he was gone. Hearing this, I couldn't stop crying, and I desperately wanted to see my dad.
My brother really treasured and loved you.
She said as she stroked my head with her warm hands, and I silently shouted thank you to my dad multiple times in my heart. My beloved dad. He always played with me. I decided I wanted to be strong for my dad's sake. I want to stay with my Aunt Helen and Uncle George, I said, and they were delighted to hear it. It seems that various procedures are necessary to stay with Helen and George, and it will take some time, but it's okay to be together in the meantime. I decided to do my best to help them. I helped with breakfast and dinner, and even cleaned the bathroom and toilet, to the point where they started to worry about me. Told to play like a kid, I couldn't think of anything to do, so I decided to just do my homework for now.
Emily, have you always been doing household chores at home?
My Aunt Helen asked during our dinner. As I nodded, my Uncle George sitting next to me hugged me.
You've had it tough for an elementary school student.
They'd help out at least. But I was worried because it seemed like you were trying too hard, like you were pushing yourself.
Indeed, I might have been pushing myself too hard because I wanted to be praised by my mom. Realizing something I hadn't been aware of myself, I fell silent. The effort that never earned praise. I think my mom probably didn't care about such things.
You don't have to worry about anything here anymore. We'll take your help. But what you really need to focus on are things like your friends, school, and yourself. Take good care of yourself.
The words Helen said deeply moved me. George was teary-eyed as he nodded repeatedly. I felt very happy to be with them. 2 weeks after my dad's funeral, I was called to the staff room by a teacher at elementary school. Wondering what it was about, I was told that there was a call from my mom. The teachers probably don't know the full situation. Thinking that the teachers would be troubled if I didn't answer, I picked up the phone with trembling hands. Hello.
Emily, pick up the phone quickly.
Hearing my mom's voice for the first time in a while, it was as shrill as ever.
Where the heck are you? You're not at the foster care facility I left you at.
I couldn't find my voice and fell silent.
Are you even listening to me? Well, never mind. I'm coming to pick you up. Then I'll get your child allowance. I'm having trouble with money right now.
The coldness washed over me as she spoke. To think that I wanted to be loved, praised, and not betrayed by my dad for such a person filled me with unbearable frustration. Now, I have my aunt and uncle. I have a place that matters. And my beloved dad is watching over me. I can become strong. I don't have a mom. Before I knew it, that's what I had said to her.
What are you talking about?
You must be mistaken. Goodbye then.
Wait a minute.
I hung up the phone on my own. The teacher next to me was surprised and asked if it wasn't my mom, to which I replied it was a stranger. This call was treated as a suspicious call, and the school issued a caution about it. Worried that my mom might come to pick me up at dismissal time, I called my Aunt Helen from the school's public phone. Helen immediately said she would come to pick me up and arrived shortly after. She explained the situation to the school teachers, who then decided to contact the child welfare office. After I went home, my mom apparently did come to pick me up, but the teachers handled it, and she went back reluctantly with a sour expression. There were no more incidents of my mom storming the school, but just to be safe, either my uncle or aunt started picking me up before dismissal time. I felt sorry, but both Helen and George told me not to worry about it and smiled. Thanks to them, I am living happy days. The teachers at school are also looking out for me, and I feel glad knowing I have so many allies around me. Then, one day after some time, the phone at home rang. Recently, I've been answering calls at Helen and George's house. So, as usual, I answered the phone. Hello. The voice that came from the phone was one I did not want to hear.
Isn't this Emily? I knew you were there.
I froze immediately, knowing it was my mom. I wondered how she knew I was here. No one was supposed to tell.
Stop staying there and come back soon. Things are tough over here.
My mom spoke unilaterally to silence me. According to her, her lover's company had gone bankrupt and they were out of money. It seems that living with me would mean receiving government assistance, without which they couldn't manage. She mentioned that they were living together as if married, planning to marry, but she was considering breaking up if they couldn't sustain their lifestyle. The story was hard for me to grasp, but what I understood was that she needed me for money. She must be really out of money since she mentioned the same during the call to the school. As I stayed silent, my mom grew increasingly irritated. While being yelled at, the phone was suddenly taken from my hand. Surprised, I turned around to see my Aunt Helen standing there, smiling at me. However, in the next moment, Helen's face turned stern.
Just give me an answer. Are you listening?
Stop yelling. I can hear you without all the screaming.
What?
The voice of my mom, audible even over the phone, suddenly went silent. My heart was pounding.
Aren't you ashamed to ask your own daughter to come back for money? Don't joke around. What do you think Emily is?
You have nothing to do with this. Emily is my daughter. Give her back.
Who was it that left your daughter in front of the foster care facility? Don't talk so high and mighty.
I'll call the police. I'll say she was kidnapped.
Go ahead and try. We have evidence of the terrible things you've done to Emily. In fact, please do tell them. It might resolve things faster.
What?
As I listened to the argument between my aunt and my mom, I felt a bit depressed, thinking I was causing trouble. Then my Uncle George, who had apparently come back unnoticed, stroked my head from behind.
It's okay. Leave it to us. This is a job for the adults.
He then led me by the hand and made me some hot milk.
Emily, you like hot milk, right? You drink quite a bit of it.
Yeah, I thought it was delicious the first time I tried it. That's why I like it. Hearing this, he smiled happily. After a while, Helen came back to the living room. Seeing me look worried, she ruffled my hair.
What's with that face? There's nothing to worry about. She's no match for me.
I straightened my hair and thanked her. Then I helped prepare dinner. It was the first time I realized that helping out at them could be so enjoyable. A few days later, the phone rang again, and it was my mom. Although my aunt and uncle had told me I didn't need to answer the phone anymore, I wanted to be helpful to them in any small way I could.
Emily, right? Mom is really in trouble. I need your help.
As I said before, I don't have a mom.
Well, what a heartless child. Didn't Mom raise you? Have you forgotten the fun days we spent with Dad and the three of us?
The mention of Dad struck a nerve, and I felt both a jolt and irritation. Yes, I had a lot of fun when I had my dad, but the kind one was only Dad, Mom, left me. To my own surprise, I raised my voice more than I intended. Then, I felt a sense of clarity in my feelings. From then on, I talked back to whatever my mom said.
Are you even my child? I didn't abandon you. I just left you there.
You said kids are a nuisance, so go to the foster care facility. You said it while laughing. Such a person is not a mom.
I was forced to say that. It's not my fault.
Still, you abandoned me. So, I don't have a mom. If I have a mom, it's my aunt. My dad is my uncle and my dad who went to heaven.
You're brainwashed. Just come back without fussing.
Before I knew it, I was arguing with my mom while crying. But strangely, I felt lighter, as if I had been holding back a lot until now.
At least, let me live in the house you're in. I can't even eat if things stay this way.
I can't do that. Please don't cause trouble for the people I love. Suddenly feeling someone's presence, I turned around to find Helen and George standing there. Helen patted my head and praised me for speaking up. George, nearly in tears, nodded in agreement. Then she took over the phone, and although she was speaking with my mom, she somehow seemed happy. George said that he was pleased to hear my words. He also thanked me for calling him Dad, which was something I had said spontaneously, but seeing them happy made me feel good too. For a while, there were no more calls from my mom, probably thanks to my aunt and uncle. After I had settled into living with them, Helen bought me a smartphone. Excited about my first smartphone, I exchanged contact information with my friends who had smartphones, and I was having more fun than ever. One unusual day, the home phone rang. Since the incident with my mom, the school would contact my aunt or uncle's smartphone, and since I had my own smartphone, calls from my friends would come there. Wondering who it could be, I answered. Hello. Contrary to my high spirits, the voice on the phone sounded very lackluster.
Hello, it's me.
At first, I didn't recognize who it was, wondering if it was a wrong number. Since we were instructed at school not to talk to strangers, I was about to hang up.
It's your mom. How can you forget your mom's voice?
Oh yeah. Upon closer listening, it indeed was my mom's voice. But so lackluster it was hardly recognizable.
You're in 6th grade now, aren't you?
There's no one here right now. Then my mom started crying. I couldn't bring myself to hang up, wondering what to do.
Actually, I'm in the hospital. I've gotten sick.
Well, hearing she was in the hospital reminded me of my dad. Now, remembering him doesn't make me sad. Instead, I have so many good memories with him that recalling them makes me feel better.
There's no one to take care of me. Could you take care of me? And there are hospital bills. I can't pay them. Could you ask your aunt for me?
Well,
Say something, will you?
why should I, a stranger to you, take care of you?
What?
I also refuse to pay for your hospital bills. I won't tell my aunt and uncle.
You. Don't get cocky with me.
Despite being a patient, she sounded too energetic. Hearing that my mom was sick didn't disturb me like it did when my dad was ill. Truly, my feelings for her had cooled completely. No matter what she said, I no longer felt fear. I didn't want to complain. I just felt sorry for her. I despised becoming someone like her even when I grew up. I was shocked at my own cold response. I got my smartphone. We hardly use the home phone anymore, so it's likely going to be removed. So this is really goodbye. My mom panicked at my words.
Don't say that. Please, can I have your smartphone number?
That's not possible.
There's really no one to take care of me. No one to help financially either.
Well, I'll make sure to contact someone who might help you. My words seemed to give her a bit of hope as her tone brightened slightly. I sighed hearing her hopeful voice. I asked for the name of the hospital and hung up. I immediately contacted my Aunt Helen. When I told her about the exchange, she was concerned, but praised me for managing on my own. When I asked for a favor, she agreed and immediately contacted someone. That seems like someone who would take care of her. A few days later, I noticed that the home phone kept ringing. I figured it must be my mom, so I didn't answer it. The ringing continued into the evening, even after Helen and George came home. When I told them it was still ringing, Aunt Helen sighed and answered the phone. Sure enough, it was my mom on the line, and Helen had to handle her. Mom kept demanding to talk to me, but Helen refused it. Over the phone, I could hear my mom panicking, saying she hadn't been told her brother was coming, questioning why anyone had contacted him. The person I had asked Helen to reach out to was my mom's brother. I remember hearing that my mom always had a hard time getting along with her big brother. Her brother is a very stubborn man, all about duty and compassion. So it's totally unacceptable for him to hear about Mom's affair. Her brother, enraged after hearing it from my aunt, apparently said he was coming over right away. Their first reunion in years turned out to be a disaster. And now it seems Mom's anger has turned towards us. Although Helen was usually the one fighting with my mom, George unusually told her he would take over. He's very kind, so I wondered if he'd be okay dealing with my mom, but as soon as he took over, his face went fierce.
He's even scarier than me when he's mad.
Helen whispered to me.
Hey, cut it out. If you really want to talk, I'll go. I don't care if you're sick. You better be ready.
He shouted, and with a gasp, the call ended.
Oh, she hung up.
After the phone call, George was back to his usual self, smiling as if nothing happened. It seems true that people who rarely get angry are the scariest when they do. Later, my mom was forcibly taken to her brother's place. Turns out her illness was something that could be cured quickly, and she was discharged from the hospital soon after. Living at her brother's farm, she had to help with the farm work, which she disliked. But under her brother's strict watch, she reluctantly worked. Of course, no shopping for luxury brands. She got by with hand-me-downs from the villagers. As for me, it looks like all the paperwork is done, and I've been able to become my Aunt Helen and Uncle George's child. They threw a huge celebration party for me, and I laughed more than ever. And guess what? I found out I'm going to have a little brother or sister next year, and I'm absolutely thrilled. I truly believe in cherishing family,